Right, okay, so our first panel discussion today is insurance and the need for customer centricity. So our guests today are James Wright, who's Head of Technology at Beazley. James is the Head of Technology there. He's part of the senior leadership team focused on developing and delivering seamless, intuitive digital insurance solutions for Beazley's SME clients. Before taking on that role, he held the position of Head of US IT, where he's part of the US management team responsible for the end-to-end technology platform delivering specialist insurance products for both large and small commercial bank markets. Also with us is Adam Powell, who's Chief Operations Officer at Policy Expert. Adam is the co-founder and Chief Operating Officer there, which has grown since 2010 to become one of the UK's biggest insurtech success stories, providing home and motor insurance to over 1 million policyholders. Adam's got over 20 years of experience in the insurance industry and has driven the development of Policy Expert's proprietary technology and data analytics to become a top 10 UK home insurance provider. So good morning to both of you. Thank you very much for joining us. So just to go through exactly what we're talking about here, for generations, the insurance model, I guess the perception has been a little bit of us against them, particularly if you're looking from the outside in. The common conversation being the one of, how can they screw us this time? That's often how the customer sees things. But that narrative is now changing, and that's what we want to be talking about today. And this new wave of customer-first services that puts the need of the customers really at the heart of operations. So what we're talking about today over the next 20 minutes, half an hour, is what exactly has created that shift. Why are happy customers suddenly at the top of the insurance provider's list of things to do? And how has this change of mindset affected the business of insurance, and what does it mean for the future of services? Now, normally what I do in this situation is I start by asking you questions. I'm going to flip it, because what I'd really like to know is, from the Q&A audience today, is what does customer centricity mean to you? If I could get a hand on this, what does it really mean to you? How do you understand that? Luke's at the back waiting with a microphone if someone wishes to chip in. No one is keen on that one. So here we go. Just down at the front, please, Luke. Thank you. So what does customer centricity mean to you?
Is that coming through? Yeah. I guess for me it means customer satisfaction in all guises. So thinking about price, but also user experience as well. So probably like a lot of people here, whether looking at SME and sort of B2B insurance or for your own personal insurance, it can be quite a frustrating process to either sort of find and scout and buy the right policy, and also then find out what the best price is for you. So it's almost the flip of that. How do you improve that for your end customer?
Lovely, thank you very much. Right, I'll come to the stage then. So what does it mean to you two?
Completely agree with sentiment from the gentleman there. Essentially for us, it's about putting the client, or the broker in our case, because we don't sell directly, we go through our brokerages, at the heart of product design and process design, and really ensuring that everybody in our team understands that what they're doing is ultimately for the benefit of the client or the broker. There's lots of other factors they think about, cost, efficiency, but fundamentally embedding that mindset and that culture in the team is absolutely critical.
Yeah, I'd echo those sentiments. I think for us it was about taking a step back from some of the preconceived ideas that management or founders or people in the business might have seen in other operations. Really getting under the skin and listening to what the customer wanted, whether that was from a price perspective, product coverage, from the claims, all the way through that end-to-end value chain. And not just saying that we were listening, but really trying to understand what that customer wanted, as opposed to us saying we were listening, but then doing what our preconceived ideas were anyway.
Was often previously the problem? There would be the rhetoric of saying, yes, the customer's most important, the customer comes first, but then still almost carrying on doing things the way things were done before.
From our experience, we talk to a lot of the big insurers, and they say that they are customer-centric. They talk a really good game on it, But very often their actions don't equal what they're talking and the sort of rhetoric that they're putting out there. So it's matching, say, what we're doing and what we're listening to, what we're hearing, and then really taking that focused action from a customer-centric place, as opposed to just saying we're going to do it and doing something different.
So let's really link this to the insurance industry. What does it really mean for an insurance company to be customer-centric? What behaviours do we see? What sort of physical actions do we see?
We are direct to consumer, so we have that interface, unlike James, which is through brokerages. So what we do, we embed it all the way through that value chain. So whether it's from an onboarding point of view, ongoing training, the way that we have it embedded in our North Star, the vision for the business, it permeates everything that we do, front to back, from acquisition all the way through to claims. It's just part of the culture, it's part of the DNA. It isn't a bolt-on, there isn't here's our customer officer, and they are the ones that are responsible for it. Everybody is responsible for it in the business, and it's embedded deeply in our DNA.
It's a pillar in every decision.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, so building on that, talking about a real example of what we've done. So Beaz Digital is a business within a business. We're focused on small commercial clients. And what we've done is completely redesigned the organisation around the client. So what this means for us is that we've got cross-functional teams that are organised around how our customers want to buy our products. So they're not organised by products or by operations and technology. You've got all of the experts you require in channel functions, and that's based on how our brokers have explained to us they want to consume our products and services. So we've fundamentally changed how we've organised ourselves to be more customer-centric. And the second part of that then is making sure that those cross-functional teams have got objectives which are shared across those functions and that include measurements of customer centricity.
Because is it difficult to make that change if it's something that's been not done previously, and all of a sudden you're having to integrate it into what you do, rather than, as you say, the expression I think was used, bolting on? How on earth do you actually get that into your DNA when previously it necessarily wasn't?
I think for a legacy carrier like Beazley, we've got a lot of great specialist products. A lot of them are sold to large organisations, which is not what we're doing. We've had to sort of step back and say, okay, we're looking at SME clients, we need to be more efficient, we need to be better at focusing on their needs. How do we fundamentally shift that? So we've taken an approach to redesign an entity around that. I think it's a bit different for you as a...
It is a bit different for us. I've always worked in the startup world, so we dig the businesses out of the ground and we can bake it in from day one. But what we've seen where we've worked with bigger insurers or bigger businesses is that change is hard. There's people in those businesses, they might be nearing retirement or they've just got preconceived ideas, and accepting that change and starting to act fundamentally differently is really quite hard for some people. So thinking that you can take a big carrier or a big business and pivoting it can be really difficult in our experience. So what have we seen? Other places that have done it really well. Different work streams within the business. So you could have a run the business, change the business, two different work streams. We've seen it as an incubator. So you set up a separate team within the business, but it is a different management team. It's given that autonomy and it can really operate differently. It can develop its own culture, or a separate business altogether, where you go and spin something out, it receives the funding from the parent, and it really is a separate business. And maybe over time it consumes the original business. But expecting it to work within the current team can be really difficult in our experience. So one way or another, you've got to split that out.
Because just picking up on something you said about, it might be ingrained, it might be some, a senior management team who might be coming up to retirement, who might be very, very set in the ways that they do things. What advice would you maybe give to people about how you actually go about having that conversation? You know full well this needs to be what happens to the business. You know full well you need to get everyone on board with this. How do you go into that boardroom or office or whatever and actually look to make those tangible changes with someone who might be resistant?
From experience of doing some of this, the one thing that we've done a lot of recently this year, and it's cut through some of these barriers, is value testing concepts with clients, collecting the data and then bringing that back to be more evidence-based. In our environment, there's a lot of anecdotal examples of why something may or may not work, and what we've done is said, okay, let us, in a very cost-effective, small, cheap way, let's test the concept. if we get positive feedback, play that back to you in data, and we'll continue to build on it. That's helped us a lot overcome some of the inertia that we've felt in our market specifically.
I completely agree with the testing point. We've baked in A/B, multivariate testing, all sorts of journey optimization testing throughout that end-to-end chain. It is key. For us, what we've seen is that even armed with data, some people won't accept that change. And that's where we've said, fine, not everybody can come on the journey. We have to split a team out at some point that wants to go on the journey. We can't push them. We can't force them into a place or push water up a hill. So as much as we can try and bring them on that journey with data, with the narrative that you would expect, some people just don't want to go on it. And that's where we'll create separate teams for it.
Yeah, the expression I often use when you've got all that data together, you've got an argument that's very difficult to counter. It's almost an intelligence test not to fail when you can prove it beyond all reasonable doubt, and there's still the pushback. But let's look at this narrative that is changing that we were mentioning a moment ago. For you, what's inspired this move towards customer centricity among insurance providers? What's really been that inspiration, that game changer to make people want to make that fundamental change?
From our perspective, there's a fundamental shift in the consumer. Generations have changed, people have got older, buying habits, desires of the past, they are changing. There's no getting away from that. And that, for me, is just an ongoing evolutionary trend that businesses have to follow. So one is that the underlying consumer is different. The other one is that there is an opportunity there for businesses to embrace it. If they can get their head around that, there is a mutual opportunity for businesses to make some money as well. It's finding the balance, though, between that changing customer and consumer need we can't rip the customers off. They've gone way beyond that. So we've got to find that balance between making the right returns for investors, stakeholders, but also giving something back to the customer that is clearly a more balanced outcome than what they've seen in the past.
And James, this is probably more one for you to start with, but how will that move towards customer centricity affect, how do we describe it, the legacy providers, I suppose, who might be more fixed in a sort of more non-customer centric setup? How do you think the legacy providers will be affected by this?
I'll speak from what we've done to overcome this problem, but it's bringing new people and new skills into the organisation that may not have historically been there before. And in the audience here, some of you guys may have those skills, but in a traditional insurer like ourselves, having a customer success team or doing some customer journey mapping, these are concepts that could be relatively alien. So I think the first thing is start to introduce new skills into the function, but more importantly, not as a side division. They've got to be in the trading team, almost on par with the underwriters and the leadership to help drive the outcomes and drive the objectives. One of the things that we've done that's helped in this regard specifically is adopting like an OKR framework from the top down. So that's objectives and key results. So really from the leadership level down, we've got a standard set of strategic objectives, and everyone in the division understands how they're contributing to achieve a small result which contributes to the strategy. That has been a very difficult piece of work to achieve, but it's been very impactful in changing that mindset and outcomes.
Because if there is that, I think the expression used earlier on was a bolt-on. What examples have you seen of people trying to do like a bolt-on department and it not working? What are the risks of doing it in that way?
We've seen some of the big brands, particularly in home and motor, which is really our playground, certainly for the foreseeable future. Big brands that have taken not on an incubator route, but they've tried to carve out a customer team. And so they have got one, but they haven't given it any power. It's overridden all the time by this sort of traditional powerhouse of the board or a senior management team or a sales and marketing function. So they've ticked the box. They have a customer team or a head of customer, whatever they want to call it. But they haven't empowered that team. They've just, in our eyes, ticked a box. And that happens all the time. It certainly has done until more recently. I think COVID has helped shift some of that along, where businesses have just been really forced to move things along. Even the way they work logistically, being more remote, on Teams, on Zoom, that collaboration has opened up more. But there has to be that shift in power from this sort of traditional sales marketing focus. Let's make the sales, let's get the money in. We've got to take a step back and empower those customer teams, because
or else can it become white noise if you've got, oh right, well there's the customer guy sending another email, there's the customer guy calling another meeting.
And they've got no power.
Yeah.
They can come up with some great ideas, but they've got no backing.
But as more and more businesses go through digital transformation, these are huge, periods of time for these companies that are making these big digital transformations. Is this an opportunity? Is this a time when whole structures of businesses are being redesigned to actually hardwire this into what they do? Should it be treated as an opportunity?
From what we've seen, it's a huge opportunity. We set the business up back end of 2010, and we're now in the top 6 home insurers. So all we've done is taken a very customer-centric view. We've bowled into the home insurance market, and there's the opportunity. We're now trying to do it in motor. We'll try and do it in pet after that. There's other insurers that would, why can't they do the same? It's a market share grab for us, but we have to do it on a customer-centric basis. And market share is market share for us or anybody else, and that for us is the opportunity.
Now, we've spoken a bit about working with brokers or other distribution partners. That's a much wider network. I guess things you maybe don't have quite so much control over, I suppose. How important is that relationship with the partners to keep that customer-centric approach, particularly if you've got a methodology and approach and you want some of that to transfer to everyone else who's, well, if not speaking in your name, is speaking alongside you?
It was mentioned this morning on the main stage, talking about ecosystems, and fundamentally, and you mentioned the full customer journey as well, it would not work for us not to include our distributors in understanding that customer journey and what makes a difference. And so it would be arrogant and I think naive to believe we can build something and they will come. So everything has to be done with the distribution network and the brokers in mind. They fundamentally, for us, have the access to the client, and it's in our interest for them to win as well. So we want to create a win-win environment for the broker, for the carrier, and ultimately that means that the client benefits as well. So the distributors are also trying to do things more efficiently. They're also being disrupted by, in our case, a lot of insurtech entrants. So there is a lot of energy right now, a lot of engagement in doing things more holistically and more digitally across the market, and I think that's very encouraging.
I think partners for us has been a really interesting journey because we've vertically integrated very, very deeply. From acquisition, typically we're plugged into the price comparison websites. We do direct as well. So we're really integrated with those guys. But as you step through our value chain, at times we've had partners along the way, but as they become really key to the customer proposition, typically we brought them in-house. So claims fulfillment, emergency networks, home emergency networks out in the back, we brought that in-house. Some of the drying technology, where we would rely on other third parties to bring the dryers in the event of flooding, we brought that in-house. So we do see a space for partnerships, but when they become so key to our customer proposition, we want the control so that we can deliver that consistent level of service.
Now, I'm going to be the grit and the oyster for a moment because I think this is probably a key conversation a lot of people have. And if you're working with a partner who isn't hitting the standards of customer service or customer centricity that you want, how do you go about having that conversation to get them to work the way you want to do without fundamentally disrupting that relationship?
I can give you an interesting example of this one. Most of our business is built around home insurance. So we're in the business of, we build houses because they've been knocked down or flooded, and we repair houses. We are not builders ourselves. So the bulk of our partnerships are with the contractor and the builder network. Typical tradespeople, they can have quite a different perspective on where perhaps our starting point would be. So we've had to bring them on that journey of what does it mean in terms of how we want to solve somebody's claim, how we treat their house with respect or the customer with respect.
Well, it's the face the customer sees, isn't it? That's
Absolutely.
the person who's coming through their front door.
And that's the service they've bought, that claims experience. But when it's the builder and it's not us, we have to bring that builder, a team of builders, really on a journey of this is how we want to deliver this. This is not what we want, this is what we want. And where it falls down, and it does go wrong at times, we have to go through this is really what we want again. But we hit a point where we take those builders off the network. We're then left with a more focused group of builders that are aligned to our business values. And where possible now, we will invest in those builders to build those businesses even bigger for their mutual benefit and for ours, so that we have a smaller set of builders within the network, but that are really aligned to our business values. And that's just an example of how we go deeper and deeper into that value chain.
I've got another example in the cyber insurance space. So we're a large insurer of cyber risk across the market. Fundamentally, we want to improve the client's cyber posture, make them more secure. But often what we're finding is that they don't know they're insecure, and the broker's not qualified to help advise on that. So what we've been doing more and more of this year is not only doing vulnerability scanning on behalf of the client and delivering those results back to them, but providing advisory to the broker and the client to say, listen, you've got these vulnerabilities on your network, here's how to resolve them, and if you do resolve them, you become an insurable client. And that's been very, very well received, because often it's just a no or it's a very high premium. What we'd rather do is make you secure and make you insurable. And again, that's something that we're trying to scale at the moment. It's not an easy thing to scale, but it's definitely a very client-centric activity we're doing.
Well, that's something for the future, which I'll get onto in just a second. But we will get onto your questions in just a moment. So do think if there's anything you do want to ask. And also, if you're watching virtually from home or wherever you are, do remember you can put your questions on the app too. They come directly through to me. But the last question I'll ask you both, and if we can keep this relatively short and sweet, is where do you see the future in regards of customer centricity? Where do you think it'll go, and how far do you think it'll go?
I think there'll be more momentum. I don't think it's a trend that's going away. I think it will continue to accelerate, and I hope and I think that it will happen is there'll be more co-creation between brands and the end customer. Why can't we get more and more into those sort of forums where it's not us just putting it out there of, is this a good idea, but we properly engage the customer throughout that value chain of co-creation, whether it's product, distribution, enhancements, everything throughout that chain. The co-creation is key for us.
I think in our market, it's going to be about services. Fundamentally, the client's trying to transfer risk. Insurance is one vehicle to do that, but there's many other vehicles as well. And what we'd be looking to do is to understand what those things are and adding them in either as complementary services for free or as potential add-ons next to the insurance product.
Okay, well, there's plenty more I'd like to ask you, but I will come to the audience. Has anyone got any questions for our panel today? Right, we have our first hand up over there. I love it when a hand goes up quickly. It always means I have to fill awkwardly for a few seconds.
Hi, really interesting. My name's Yvonne Fuller. I'm from Good Innovation. We're a social impact innovation consultancy. We're working with the likes of Aviva, who want to bring their customers in on their sustainability goals and their social impact goals. And we're coming up with some solutions for them in order that they can bring those in. How important are you finding that that is an important part of what you're offering your consumers at the moment?
From a sustainability angle, do you mean?
And social impact in general.
Yeah, so we're very much at the beginning of that journey. As a startup, we had so many other priorities ultimately to keep the business stable and then put us in a place where we can now start to look at ESG policies. So increasingly we see it as something that is key, that we need to play back and engage to customers on. But for us, up until this point, it wasn't a strategic priority because there were just other things like keeping the lights on that were more fundamental.
Yeah, very important for us. We have an ESG syndicate. So for large risk, we have capital that's ESG, scores ESG well, that clients that score ESG well can be insured by. From our perspective on the SME market, we're looking for market segments at the moment where there is a high interest in ESG information, and we're looking to curate some custom content for those clients. So yeah, it's big on our agenda.
Another question down at the front.
Hi. Sorry. My name is Daulat. I'm from Kazakhstan. And the question is to James. For example, as it was told about the client-centric, if the partner is not working as your strategy, you just off it from your ecosystem. But if it is a broker, it's also your client, but not the direct client. It's not final client, but direct client you're working with. And if it is not working in your strategy, if it is not client-centric, or it has its own client strategy that's not the same line as yours, what do you do usually? I tried to hear it.
Yes, well, our approach at the moment is specifically to look for partners, brokers, that we believe can be a digital partner in our journey going forward. So the way that we're now vetting and understanding who we work with, this is more of a factor in making that decision than it's been historically. And we'll see how that plays out over the next few years. But we're just at the start of that journey.
We would have time for one more question if there are any further, and just on the aisle here, and then I'll release you to the coffee stations.
Thank you. Yeah, really good chat today. I guess for me, the question is getting that buying at top level and having that strategy land at top level and then fall down. I've been in operations where you try and do it from the bottom up and it kind of hits a wall. So for companies who are kind of going on a journey, what would you say is from the lessons you've learned, what were the key things to get that established and really drive that kind of culture and vision through the business?
I can go first on this one. I guess it's a bit different for us. We founded the business and we've always had it from the top. So as we've grown, we've built a management team and a senior leadership team. We've just cascaded it down from there. Genuinely, how you instill something similar in an even bigger business, taking Aviva as an example, is mind-boggling. So for us, we've always dug the businesses up and out of the ground. It's a different world for me in the big corporates. That's a genuine challenge. But for me, that's the opportunity that we're seeking to ride.
The way that we did it as an incumbent, which I was slightly lucky, most of last year we was in mobilisation, and we stepped back with a cross-functional team across all the disciplines and said, right, what are our shared objectives to make this work? I thought that would be a relatively quick process of a couple of weeks because it was obvious to me, and it was not.
That is a wry smile if ever I've seen it.
It took probably 6 months to agree how we were going to measure and drive our objectives for this division. Now that process in itself meant that we got on the same page, we understood each other, and now in execution it's been much, much smoother. So coming from a technology background, it sounds like you're from operations, that's the one recommendation. I'll get your top team together and make sure you all speak in the same language.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you so much for your questions. James, Adam, thanks so much for your time and expertise. A round of applause for them, please. Thanks.